Good evening and welcome to 50 Days with our penultimate episode before the US election. I'm Caitlin Lang.
And I'm Ben Cook. In today's episode, we will be sitting down with 50 Days favourite Kristen Blackstone and Taylor Umland to get their final prediction for next week's election.
Then I'll be taking us through the betrayal of women in power and within the media and government.
Then Claudia, Jess and I will be looking at interesting characteristics of First Ladies throughout the ages, just in time for when we may have our very first gentleman.
Then our director Jess Blissett will be talking about her own experience and speaking to people across the pond about how they feel since the overturn of Roe v Wade in 2022.
But for now, and a final time, Rosaline Titterhern will be taking us through the voting system and potential predictions for the election in 4 days. Over to you, Rosa.
Thanks, Caitlin. So, it's the final episode before the election, and Trump's final pitch has been doubling down on his divisive rhetoric, saying he'd end income tax and perform mass deportations. Kamala's final pitches have been similarly consistent, surrounding women's healthcare, the economy, and unity between parties. Meanwhile, we have absolutely no idea how this election's going to go. Let me show you here the New York Times Siena poll just next up that's got everyone talking. Here you can see, contrary to previous weeks, we're at a complete tie, 48 to 48. How has this happened? In previous weeks, I've been telling you Kamala's slightly ahead, just slightly ahead, and now we're even. So in order for this to happen, if we think the polls were correct before, there would have to be a last-minute steady gain for Trump, which is really positive for his campaign. So let's have a look at another one. This is the 538 poll, which is actually an average of a huge number of polls. This is the one I've been using each week, but I thought I'd show you quickly what I've been looking at. So here is the list of polls which go into creating the 538 poll. And here we've got 48 to 48, 48 to 48, 49 to 47, and a whole range of that kind of answer. So they're all very similar. Is this wrecking your head yet? Because I hope not. We're about to dive even deeper into the polls today. The simple question to ask at this stage before an election is, can we trust the polls? Here I've got a tweet from Harry Enton, CNN's polling expert, saying that he has absolutely no idea what's going to happen. This remains the closest presidential election he has ever seen. This election isn't just tight, it's baffling pollsters. Maybe it is just dead even, the public split 50-50, and they're absolutely correct. But just for a second, let's run through the reasons that that might not be the case. So, first of all, a real problem with polls can be herding. This is a phenomenon where pollsters, in an effort to be and seem accurate, copy each other in the final days of an election. So here's an example. This is an Iowa Senate race. It had a real diversity of polls, as you can see. So these little dots here, they are the different polls early on in the election. But as we get closer, they've converged. Each poll has become much more like the other. They fall into line, so to speak. But the actual result was far off that. The actual result was here. So these early polls, they were correct, but everyone else fell into line and thought it was going to be around this. Now, why does that happen? The reason that that happens is that the early polls look like outliers, but they were correct. It could be that after getting it wrong a lot in recent elections, pollsters are desperate to seem reliable and so are making their polls look more like everyone else's to play safe. Another issue is weighting, so pollsters accept that polling sometimes underrepresents groups. 2016 was an example of that, where the Trump supporters were not picked up until the result. To combat this, they sometimes give different weightings to groups to create a more accurate prediction. So this is actually a part of what causes herding, because if you're all weighting people the same with the same algorithm, it's going to come out the same. So take these next polls in the swing states. There is an unbelievable amount of them saying the same thing. So should we believe it? Should we believe that they are all dead even? Well, if we think they've weighted it, then it could go either way. It could be that for the third time in a row, we have underestimated Trump supporters. However, it could also be that this time we have overweighted in favour of Trump supporters to ensure we don't miss them and have instead overestimated his vote share. So take a look at the graph here. It shows overestimations in previous elections. Now, as you can see, after the 80s, we have a rigid pattern. So we get up to here, and then for every cycle after that, we've got 2 overestimations for Democrats. And then for one cycle, we overestimate Republicans. We got 2, then 1, 2, then 1. And that was 2012, 2016, 2020. That would show that we are due an overestimation of the Republican vote. So next up here, I have some interesting info for you. This is early voting in Georgia. The number of early voters is already over 1 million higher than the total of early votes in 2020. Trump has told his supporters to vote early, so this could be Republicans. However, if you look here, women outnumber men by 10 points, and women are statistically showing support for Kamala. So we can't base everything off of early votes, but it certainly begins to hint at possible trends. Now, very, very quick, before I leave you, I want to show you which combinations of states to look out for on election night, or nights plural, depending on how the count goes. So this is 2016. Trump won all of our swing states, except for Nevada, a comfortable win. However, in 2020, the next one, Biden won them all except for North Carolina. Now, to be fair, in the past, Georgia and North Carolina have not been firm swing states, but they are in the mix now. Now here is the CNN prediction map up next. Most of these states are just leaning. So these like lighter coloured ones, if you've seen a map like that, that's because they are leaning that way. The swings are in yellow, they're fully in the middle. So what would be the simplest outcome? What's the simplest one to look out for? The simplest win for the Democrats at this moment is these 3. On the next side, we've got the Rust Belt. So Kamala could win these 3 and lose literally every other swing state. But if she just gets Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin, she gets to 270, just. So let's say she wins Nevada. So Trump hasn't won all of these states, but loses just one. If we look next, he wins just one of the Rust Belt and wins these, Kamala gains these, and he loses Nevada. That isn't enough. Nevada is not enough, fortunately for Trump. We have to get this Rust Belt. Now, another option for the Democrats, if they lose a couple of the Rust Belt states here, is to try and gain Georgia and North Carolina. So in the next scenario, we've got them retaining Pennsylvania, gaining North Carolina, Georgia. Trump gains Michigan and Wisconsin. We have Kamala as the winner. So clearly, Trump's strategy must be to shore up his southern votes and take a chunk out of those Rust Belt states. However, he is at a disadvantage here because if you look at the original map reversed, up next we've got if Trump wins every Rust Belt state but loses everything else. Unlike Kamala, he will not win, and that's because of their other strongholds. So now you know what to look out for. If you want, pause, go back, have another look at what I've said, have a zoom in. Election night next week, we will be doing a show, bringing you as many predictions and results analysis as we can. We have some fun stories planned to keep you entertained, so make sure to tune in. Like previous years, the chances are we won't have a final result for you on election night. However, we do have exit polls, which could be interesting to interpret. Here are the times in America up next that these will drop, and we will be right here watching with you and bringing you some answers. So thank you so much for tuning in over the past 50 days, and we'll see you on Tuesday. Back to you, Caitlin and Ben.
Thanks, Rosa. So, as we've heard, the race is incredibly tight, with Vice President Kamala Harris and former President Donald Trump are neck and neck in votes.
So joining us in the studio to discuss this in a bit more detail is Kristen Blackstone and Taylor Umland.
Kristen, Taylor, give us your first initial thoughts about how you think the race is going. Is it what you expected? Did you think it would be this close?
Yes, it is exactly what I expected. I'm quite nervous, but I am hopeful.
I mean, it's kind of followed the script. There's been the October surprise. I mean, there's been all this stuff in the last few days about different insults being held back and forth, the Puerto Rican thing. I mean, this is what happens in elections that are tight, is there's these little stories that emerge that we don't really know if they make a difference until the actual election day.
Can you give us your predictions for November 5th?
No. So when I was doing my PhD, my supervisor gave a very big public lecture, really confident that Hillary Clinton was going to win, and he told absolutely everyone that. And obviously, she didn't win, and he has never lived it down. So I'm keeping my predictions quite close-lipped. But I do think the race will be a close one. I don't think either candidate is going to have a complete runaway on election night.
I see.
You know, it is funny you mentioned that, because there are we had Brexit, right? I went back to America right when the Brexit vote happened. I was teaching at the time, and I told my students, like, don't be so sure, right? And then, like, all hell broke loose, and then Trump got elected. So we keep seeing these votes that we aren't expecting to happen. So predicting it is tough, but I think what we do know is that it's incredibly tight.
Anything can happen, really.
It really comes down to voter
Turnout. It will,
Yeah, and as we've been getting closer to the election, I have been looking at how it's being perceived by other people across the world, and even people in America, but that are from other parts of the world. A range of many different people from different countries are genuinely worried about how another Trump term could affect their lives directly. So he's obviously promising huge mass deportations, and the growing number of African asylum seekers and economic migrants in the US. They are really worried about how this could reshape their entire future. And then we've also got 120,000 Ukrainian Americans, especially living in Pennsylvania, which is a key swing state. They worry that Donald Trump's plans to end the war in Ukraine very swiftly will result in Kiev being pressured to give up territory to Moscow. So that's just two examples of people from different countries. Do you believe that this sense of fear from different groups of people across America could be a key factor in Trump losing the vote, that people are just simply too afraid of him?
I think the sense of fear is a completely legitimate sense. How much that's going to impact voters, I don't know. I think people who wouldn't vote for Trump anyway are the people who are fearing that potential concerns. And so whether that will sway anyone who's on the fence about not voting for Trump and voting for Harris instead, I think really remains to be seen. And also, a lot of those people with those very legitimate concerns about how it will affect their lives don't have the rights to vote in the US. So it's whether they can convince other people near them, their neighbors, their friends, to vote in ways that are going to benefit them.
Well, it is quite interesting because the Ukrainians that I mentioned, the 120,000 that are in Pennsylvania, they would have probably historically have always leaned towards a more conservative candidate, and it's only the situation in Ukraine that is making them possibly lean over to Kamala. So yeah, it is interesting. And Lady Gaga has said that if Trump is the next president, that she will leave America on a one-way ticket to Canada. But then at a recent New York rally, Donald Trump described as a love fest. Other politicians that have been politicians for maybe 30, 40 years, have got a lot of experience. They have also said the same. So do you think a lot of the negative press that is out there about Trump sort of makes us disillusioned to the fact that he is kind of loved in America?
I think the thing I think the thing to remember is that, like, for all the bluster and sort of bravado around Trump, really, when you break down his policies, he's an America first, isolationist, if you want to call it that. But it's not necessarily we hate everyone else. His platform is to put America first. And I think that's a hard thing for people to understand all the time, especially in the way he goes about it. It's not a very subtle way, is it? Yeah. But it really, it does make people scared. Going back to your previous question, it makes people nervous about what this could mean for them, because it is not how America has operated for a very, very long time. So when people say, like, I might move to Canada and these things, I think those are legitimate fears, because you think your way of life, how things around you, how things are framed, is going to change. But I don't know if Trump if he's elected, is going to be the doomsayer who's going to end America as we know it. We think, if we believe in the American system, he'll only be there for another 4 years. Can do quite a bit of damage in that time, but really it comes down to wanting to put America first rather than sort of be a part of the global stage.
I guess the key thing to remember is, on the other hand, although those policies are what are scaring a lot of Americans and are scaring a lot of people internationally, those are also the policies that a lot of the people who vote for him, his supporters, really like. So he is attractive to quite a significant number of the American population, which is why this is so close. And I think for the others, either they aren't sold on Harris, or they don't they're not as worried about Trump as some people are. And so you have a lot of antipathy in this middle ground of people who are quite ambivalent, and it's those people that are going to decide. It's that number of people who may or may not vote that will decide the election, I think.
I see. Well, we've talked about Trump. Let's turn to Kamala for a minute. Not only will she be the first female president, well, potentially, she will be the first black female president. Do you think she, or America rather, is ready for this? Or do you think perhaps this might be overshadowed by, you know, the criticisms of the Biden administration? Can she get rid of these criticisms?
I think she can, and is doing a very good job at kind of laying off the criticisms of the Biden administration. She's making it very clear that her presidency isn't just going to be a continuation of the Biden presidency, that she does have her own policies that she wants to put forward. Whether America is ready for her or not, I would really love to hope so. I think it would be phenomenal to have the first female black president of the United States, but I guess we'll find out next week.
Only time can tell.
I'm speaking from a male perspective here, which is different. But I think it's been interesting to see how Kamala has gone about basically not talking about herself as a woman candidate, or even really as a minority candidate for most of the time. She's just been talking about herself as a candidate. And I think that actually helps her in this case, especially where she came into the race. She didn't have to start as early like Hillary did, being that first sort of trailblazer, I'm a woman, let's get the vote out for women. She's just been able to fill in as sort of a Democratic candidate, which I think has really helped her as the trail's gone along.
And Taylor, that is a very interesting point that you made, because I think it's sort of there isn't as much emphasis in terms of media coverage in the press about Kamala being a woman as there was with Hillary Clinton. Do you think that ultimately that is why Kamala could be more successful than Hillary was, because she hasn't, you know, sort of played the woman card in use of better words?
I think it's either that, or the fact that maybe Hillary just sort of took away the newness of it. Like it isn't new for a woman to run for president now. The new thing is that she's not white, Kamala. But you know, we've done this before. This isn't the first time it's happened.
Hillary led the groundwork.
And it just sort of now it's a bit more normalized.
That's true. I think also Kamala has probably been the first for everything in her entire life. Right? She's very used to this. She is the first woman of color to do something, and so I don't think she's emphasizing it as much, because for her it's a very normal occurrence.
And guys, I just want to look a little bit forwards, because we haven't got long at all now until the big day. The last time we were in this situation, it was not a peaceful turnover. No. You know, we had what happened in the Capitol. Donald Trump was refusing to sort of, you know, even take accountability, if that's the best word to say, that he was not going to be the president for the next term. Do you think we're going to see a peaceful turnover?
I think it slightly depends on who wins. If Donald Trump wins, then yes, I think there will be a peaceful turnover. If Kamala Harris wins, I don't know. I think he's been sowing the seeds for some sort of protest against the results if he doesn't win for months now. Basically, since September, he's made it very clear if he doesn't win this election, he thinks it's been rigged. He's definitely going to win. And I think a lot of his supporters buy into that. So I think there is certainly going to be protest in one way or another. How violent that gets, I don't know. But also, I think because of what happened in 2020, the United States is more prepared for the potential. I certainly am not the only person who is concerned about this. The international community is concerned. Lots of people in America are concerned, and I'm sure they will put safety measures in place to ensure that something similar can't happen again.
I see.
There's been a couple of things that I think are interesting here. We had the elections in Georgia. Was it this week or last week? And there's been issues of Russian meddling, and then the people who lost, the left-leaning party, have been sort of saying, well, we're not sure if this is legitimate. So we're kind of seeing it from both sides, the right and the left. But I think what's really interesting is how much early voting there's been in America. Record numbers, even by COVID standards, when we couldn't go vote at the polls as easily. Record numbers of votes coming in early, which means that people, I think, must still have a sense of safety in the system. They still believe in the system despite everything that's happened, but they don't want their vote counted on the day. Maybe there's just sort of anxiety there.
Yeah, I think that's entirely possible. Maybe they do have concerns about people counting in person on the day. Maybe they just want to ensure that they definitely have time to vote. Depending on where you're from in America, the queues to vote can be quite large.
I would imagine so, yeah.
There are not a huge number of polling stations in individual localities, so you could be queuing for hours. And with people's work schedules, that's often just not possible. So maybe this election people are just feeling a greater sense of urgency that they really want their vote to count, and so they need to get it in early.
So there's just more of a need to be cautious across all grounds
Entirely
for the American people.
Yes. Yeah.
Well, Taylor and Kristen, thank you very much for joining us. Thank you for all of your contributions throughout the last 50 days. It's been great to have two great Americans living in England on the sofa with us. And yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you
great.
very, very much.
Thank you.
In the media landscape, women in positions of power often find themselves navigating a complex narrative. While their achievements can inspire and empower, they are frequently subjected to scrutiny and stereotyping. From the portrayal of political leaders to women in corporate leadership, the media can simultaneously celebrate their successes while reinforcing traditional gender norms. Take, for example, Hillary Clinton, an American politician and diplomat known for being the first woman to run for President of the United States and the wife of former President Bill Clinton. Her 2016 United States presidential election campaign was divided between her reverent supporters and unyielding haters. Her campaign, along with that of Donald Trump, became one of the most polarizing in American political history. Critics of Hillary Clinton, including those in mainstream news outlets, focused on negative stereotypes associated with female politicians. They criticized her appearance, family life, and competence, often relying on stereotypes like emotionality. Fox News, in particular, ran 330 stories about Hillary Clinton in 2015, with 300 of them reportedly negative. However, it's important to note that not all criticism of Hillary Clinton was illegitimate. BBC published a significant article titled "The Dark Depths of Hatred for Hillary Clinton," which reported instances of open hatred towards her. One woman expressed her distrust in Hillary, saying she is a lying, manipulative, narcissistic woman who deserves nothing except to be put in jail for life. This distrust in Hillary Clinton appeared to go beyond stereotypes for some Americans. However, it's unfair to say that Hillary Clinton was universally despised. In fact, support for women within the Democratic Party and their supporters has arguably become the main focus of mainstream media coverage. American actress Yuzo Aduba wrote a powerful statement in Elle magazine, asserting, "Hillary was intellectually equal to her husband and those in the political sphere. She had no intention of being modest about that fundamental truth. Neither her husband nor his male political counterparts ever had to downplay their professional abilities. So why should she?" Despite this power, however, Hillary Clinton clearly couldn't escape the legacy of her husband, Bill Clinton. In the United Kingdom, the portrayal of women in power is equally divided. For example, Theresa May, a British politician who served as Prime Minister of the United Kingdom and leader of the Conservative Party from 2016 to 2019, is the second woman to ever hold the position of Prime Minister in British history, and has equally divided opinion. May's administration was undoubtedly challenging, with Brexit dominating the headlines. However, the media focused more on her personal life, appearance and gender, rather solely on her policies. The University of Warwick explored May's portrayal in the media in their article, "Why Women in Politics May Not Escape Gender Stereotypes Anytime Soon." They highlighted May's appearances in fashion magazines and how a national newspaper commented on her legs, which was particularly distasteful as it was during a discussion about independence in Scotland following Brexit. However, May was also evaluated on her political decisions and outfit choices in addition to her appearance. She ultimately resigned due to rejection of her draft Brexit withdrawal agreement by Parliament and her party's poor performance in the 2019 European parliamentary election. As such, examining the media portrayal of women in power, particularly figures like Hillary Clinton and Theresa May, reveals a complex interplay of admiration and criticism. Both women have been celebrated for breaking glass ceilings and championing policies that empower others. Their leadership roles have inspired many, demonstrating the potential for women to influence politics globally. However, the media narratives surrounding them are often tainted by gendered biases that prioritise personal attributes over professional achievements. Clinton and May have faced scrutiny not only for their political decisions, but for their appearances, emotions, and interpersonal dynamics, criticisms that their male counterparts often evade. This duality in portrayal reflects broader social attitudes towards women in authority, revealing a tendency to both elevate and undermine their roles simultaneously.
Women in positions of power have been historically underestimated, but does this still linger in the current day? Well, I sat down with Alvina Imran, president of the student union here at with the University of Salford to find out what her experience has been like so far.
Can you explain a little bit about your role at the Student Union here at Salford?
Yes, of course I can. So obviously I am the president for Salford Students' Union, and the role is pretty much, well, very, very variant as to what you really think. When you're actually campaigning, you think of a certain thing, or you think, you know, like the procedure is pretty easy, getting to know things or how it actually works. But when you're actually employed or you're working there, you tend to see the different things or behind the scenes bit, which kind of goes dismissed or unmissed by students really. And I think that was one thing that I really struggled with, but at the same time it was something really important. So my first 2 months initially were just training, and I think that was also like the key piece, because when we went for NUS, I could genuinely say that me and the officer team, we were very well equipped, and we knew our resources, we knew what we were doing, and everybody was so engaging that everybody was like, oh, have you had your training yet? I was like, yes we have. Yes we have.
Into this role originally?
So I actually come from a volunteering background. So I have been volunteering with charities since 2016 and 17, and like literally in Oldham, you'd name a charity and I worked with them. It was that sort of thing, and it kind of gave me like a sense of satisfaction or content knowing that I was helping people. And it just got so much to a point where I was like, you know, if I'm going to make a difference to these many students, I would love to do that. And I think that was literally the main reasons where I was like, yeah, let's go for it. But then I mean, the whole election procedure was just one thing on its own, and it was absolutely amazing. And I think I genuinely made some really, really good friendships in that time period.
Mm-hmm. And can you speak a little bit more about the election process for those of people who might not be aware of it?
Yes, of course. I mean, I've actually spoken to a lot of people about it already, and they don't actually think that's how it works. But I was like, oh, nice to know. But so essentially, like, you put yourself forward, you give your manifestos as to what you plan to do, and then you have to run like a 3-day campaigning. So it's a 3-day campaigning which starts from like 9 on the very first day, and then on the third day, 5 o'clock, voting ends, and then practically the next day you kind of get your results. So it's quite interesting because the people that my officer team were friends before elections, so we sat off, we sort of did the campaigning all together, and we had like a team of volunteers who were helping us with the whole thing. And literally, so we campaigned for 3 days non-stop, like day and night. Like, we were so into it. And speaking to students was essentially one thing. I think sometimes if you're standing for a position, what usually happens is like you tell people they just vote for me, but they don't actually explain why you need to vote for me. And I think that was one thing that my team really did well. So we were like, why, like convincing people that this is what I'm going to do, and I'll make sure I'll do it, so you guys can hold me accountable for it, that sort of thing. And it genuinely worked. So we campaigned non-stop for 3 days, and on the 4th day we literally got our results, and we came as a clean slate.
Wow.
So all friends on the positions.
Always
Thank
good
you.
to hear, yes. And so in regards to, you know, being a woman in a position of power, do you think there have been some like larger struggles that perhaps your male counterparts might not be able to relate to?
I mean, obviously, I think one, probably the barriers that women don't actually stand up for such positions. I myself, I think I was a female president after good 4 or 5 years, and I was actually standing against 9 to 10 men in general. So I was only female who was, you know, up for this president role, and it just happens that way, doesn't it? That women don't actually come up for these roles or present themselves forward, but when they do, there are likelihood chances of them winning. I think I generally had the support from almost everyone. I wouldn't say that it was just because I was only female standing, but it was also the parts that we had to convince people that this is what I'm going to do, or, you know, that sort of thing. So there was no sort of like, I'll give you this if you just vote for me, that sort of thing. So that happens, but I think coming into the role, sometimes you do think that when you're going into a room full of people might just say, oh, she's just a woman, or, you know, she's just a female, that sort of thing. I think unconsciously it has happened, but if you know you're resilient and you're, you know, empathetic, but at the same time have clear communications and boundaries, that's something that can really help you overcome it. So just setting those expectations, or just be like, I think there's also a part where you have to, people generally think you have to mold yourself into that masculine leadership. And to be honest, since I've come into this role, I've just been doing things my way, really, how I would want them to be. So I don't think, I think I'm generally a person who doesn't let peer pressure affect them. So that was really helpful for me, because I didn't think of anyone else. I was like, no, I want to do it this way, so I did, which was quite helpful. And I think I generally have a really supportive team, at the same time really supportive staff in the community and the workplace. That really helps.
About half of registered voters in the United States say this year's election will have a major impact on access to abortion. And about 1 in 8 voters says that abortion is the most important issue driving this vote, according to a new KFF study.
It does make me grateful that I live in a country where there isn't laws on my body and what I can do with my body. At the same time, my heart breaks for the women that, you know, can't get abortions, they don't have access to it anymore.
I feel like everyone deserves the right to health and choice over what happens to their body. Right now, in America, since the turn of Roe v. Wade, there's been a lot of tension between political parties about the rights to women's health and reproductive health. I always believe that if men are making the choice about women's bodies, it's completely backwards.
3 years ago, when Roe v. Wade was overturned in June 2022, I had just finished my semester in Philadelphia at the Temple University. I knew a lot of women who was going to be affected by this, so I wrote an article entitled "Having Laws Placed on Your Body, A Woman's Perspective."
Hi, I'm Sienna, and a couple of years ago Jess wrote an article about the Roe v. Wade overturn in the United States. It was one of my first issues as features editor, and one of my kind of ideas as editor was to make each article as personal to the writer as they were comfortable with regarding kind of bigger issues, and I think that this is a really perfect example.
In this article, I spoke about how, based on the risks given to sex, it made the act itself a penance. I spoke about how my friends crying to me on the phone when they heard the news, and about how it made the nervous anxiety of peeing on a stick so much worse, and all too real.
We worked really closely together on the article, and I remember being like really involved with her and, you know, helping her to write an article up to kind of the standards of the newspaper, while also delving into her own personal feelings. And I think the added element of her studying abroad in America really helped the article.
2 years later, I checked in with a friend of mine who's now still based in Philadelphia to see how she felt about the news, and particularly how it dawned on her with the upcoming election.
So everyone has the right to choose and freely choose, but when that gets tied in a political conversation and there's much ruling over what happens to a woman's body, democracy is lost, in my opinion. You know, if because of the election right now, there's fear that women will be much more at risk because these protections for their health are put down. So regardless if you believe in abortion or not and think it is right for women to choose that, I think there is also this other layer that women who, you know, want the child are even at risk, because later in term women may have to go through a necessary medical related emergency related abortion in lack of terms, because they are at risk, their child is at risk, and that would be stripped away if women do not have reproductive health care.
Since Roe v. Wade was overturned, 14 states have enacted near total bans from the moment of conception. At least 9 states have no restrictions based on how far along a woman is in her pregnancy. Georgia banned abortion after 6 weeks, which is before most women know they are pregnant. That means that about 22 million women of reproductive age live in a state that has banned abortion, according to the Guttmacher Institute.
It's been over 2 years now since Roe v. Wade was overturned. I think something like 13 or 14 states have banned or almost banned abortion, which is just so hard to believe. There's a lot of restrictions and, there's not a lot of access to abortions for people now in the United States, which it does make me grateful that I live in a country where there isn't laws on my body and what I can do with my body. At the same time, my heart breaks for the women that, can't get abortions, they don't have access to it anymore. Although I do think states like California and New York have worked hard to protect abortion rights, which kind of gives you a glimmer of hope that maybe someday other states will follow through.
Ultimately, this remains an important topic for women, especially when this is a topic that's so divided between candidates. In their manifesto, the Kamala HQ has stated, Vice Presidential Harris and Governor Walz trust women to make decisions about their own bodies and not have the government tell them what to do. Donald Trump's manifesto also includes rhetoric on reproductive rights, stating in his Republican Party platform, "We will oppose late-term abortion while supporting mothers and policies that advance prenatal care, access to birth control, and IVF, aka fertility treatments."
Depending on the presidential election results, it's kind of scary because the overturn happened under a Democratic presidency, and it's so you're kind of a bit wary of what to say when it comes to what's going to happen if Harris wins. But I have hope that if she wins, because she's a woman, and she has also said that she will kind of restore abortion access across the country, my hope is that that does come into effect, and that she will work harder than the previous president did at getting this problem solved. If Trump wins, I don't have any hope at all, because I'm positive that he would probably create more restrictive measures surrounding abortion, and I can't imagine what it feels like to be a woman in the US. So.
I think one thing that kind of just really bothers me about the US is the fact that you have to pay for most of the NHS services, the fact that we don't, and then they have to, because some of the costs for when it comes to women giving birth is absolutely crazy. Calling an ambulance, giving birth, and you're having a child and putting yourself in debt for that child. It's just beyond me. I genuinely don't understand how that works. I think that would be something that would really, really bother me.
Regardless, I believe that women, should choose what they do to their body, and the government should not be involved in that choice, and it's been like that for years and years and years. I think we're pedaling backwards in terms of what is right for women and stripping down their freedoms. And I think that is a really, really huge problem right now. And I'm interested to see what happens after the election. Obviously, who will reign our country. But it is a fear of mine for sure.
With only 4 days to go, I know this will be in the minds of many of the women who will be in the polling booths this coming November 5th.
5, 4, 3.
So moving away for a second from what the average woman may be thinking about in the polling booth, we're going to spend a minute on America's first ladies and the fact that we could potentially see the first gentleman. Take it away, Ben.
How crazy that right now in 2024 we could see a first gentleman.
It's fantastic.
But the sort of role has really evolved. In the late 18th to 19th century, the first ladies such as Martha Washington, Dolly Madison, they were hostesses, they managed the social life of the White House, they redecorated, they held dinners, gatherings, and that's how they sort of supported their husbands' political agendas. And then in the late 19th century, we had a very famous first lady called Eleanor Roosevelt.
Of course.
And she was sort of the first lady that was sort of, the media were interested in her as an individual, they used to follow her public life. And she modernised the East Wing, so it could sort of see more of an administrative role.
Yes, yeah.
And then obviously she went on to some social advocacy, and then we had Lady Bird Johnson, and she launched a beautification campaign to campaign in it, and it was to improve America's public spaces and promote conservation. So that was the first initiative by a first lady. And then with Betty Ford and Hillary Clinton, we literally did see more politically engaged first ladies, and that was in the that was in the 1970s and 1990s. Clinton did take on a formal policy role. She spearheaded a healthcare reform during her husband's presidency, and really broke new ground in the political sphere. So we've got Jill Biden now as our current first lady, and she is the
Joe Biden.
Jill Biden.
Jill Biden.
Yeah.
I was gonna
Get
say,
your listening ears on Jess. She is the first one to hold a paid job outside of her role as first lady. But guys, talking of first ladies and the fact that we may have a first gentleman very soon, I want to reminisce about some first ladies who have gone by.
There's so
I want to
many.
know ones that stands out for you and your particular favourite. So, Rosalind, I'm going to start with you. Take it away.
Well, I can't bring you too much. I can't bring you facts and figures, but I can bring you Michelle Obama.
Oh,
That's
very
a
good
strong
point.
one.
Yeah.
I'm coming out strong. Michelle Obama, I just think, is so interesting because obviously, like we've said, we've got Hillary Clinton, we've got other first ladies that have done really interesting things. She went to law school with Barack Obama. She's very well educated. A really interesting person in her own right and has a really interesting career. But I think what is most interesting to me about Michelle Obama is the way that she presented her relationship with Obama, because she came across as someone who was in a real partnership with her husband in comparison, I think, to a lot of previous first ladies where it was seen as he was in charge and she was kind of running the sideshow almost, you know. Michelle Obama was seen as like front and center. She wasn't afraid to be seen as an equal with Barack Obama. She was his support, but he was also her support, and they had a really interesting relationship that I thought was really, really good for kind of for women's rights in the country.
They were a proper first family, weren't they? And even with the children.
Obamas. It was not like, you know, Barack Obama and then the first lady. It was very much the Obamas. Like, especially when she's been doing so much great campaigning for Kamala at the moment.
Yeah.
That's been like really.
Well, that's what I was going to say. She's at the forefront of it all.
She's a really amazing public speaker as well. Almost, I would argue, and that's just my opinion, almost better than Barack Obama, and he is one of the best public speakers that we've seen.
That is a serious claim.
She is incredible.
Yeah, credit where credit's due. Jess, who is your favourite first lady and most memorable?
It's a bit controversial. Well, not controversial, but maybe not like necessarily one that everyone's heard of. Republican First Lady Barbara Bush.
Oh, I think everyone's heard of Barbara Bush.
Yeah.
I can
You know
picture
the name at least.
the string pearls and the big white hair.
I just found her very regal. You know,
Very
I felt like
regal,
she did a good job. She gave a sense of authority. You know, she very much matched, you know, her husband's kind of presidency, and I think that it's really interesting seeing how other first ladies do that. They seem to almost reflect a lot like very similar characteristics.
And I think Barbara Bush deserves a lot of credit in her support for the AIDS.
Definitely for the AIDS pandemic.
That happened. She worked closely with Princess Diana on AIDS-related causes, and it was very taboo at the time. So,
it was, and seeing like a modern lady kind of campaigning in something that was so kind of controversial and scary at the time was a big deal.
And I think she's the first lady to be the wife of a president and also the mother of a president.
Yes, she is.
Which makes her particularly interesting.
She's like the grand lady, the grand lady. I can see her being such like a regal grandma. You know what I mean?
She's a good sort of head of state representative.
And she was one of her granddaughters is quite famous, Jenna Bush. She's on the Today Show. She's a host of the Today Show, yeah. And I think she actually dressed up as her grandmother once on the show.
That.
You would, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, if you had a regal, you know, yeah. Wow.
And but then she did say to her, "You are not my favourite first lady," because that would have to be my mom.
Of
Because obviously her mum was also
of
first
course.
lady,
I was about to
which
get
is
so
laudable.
offended, but no, yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Well, I'm going to give a shout out to Rosalind Carter, who was the wife of President Jimmy Carter, a Democrat president. And she really was very similar to Michelle Obama, but this was in the 70s. She really did, she was determined that the First Lady was going to be a political role. So she was the first person to have a budget for an office in the East Wing. She ensured that her chief of staff was paid the same as the president's chief of staff. She even, this was very controversial, but she represented her husband in Latin America as a foreign envoy. Which
that
did.
is, yeah, wow,
Yeah.
that's really groundbreaking.
And also she had a very down to earth nature. She was, I think a lot of first ladies have been praised for how they've done big regeneration projects of the artwork and in the White House, but she really didn't show any interest in that. She was criticised because all the meals were fairly low budget throughout the Nixon administration, and there was a ban on ban of hard liquor because she just wanted to get down to the politics. She was also a big mental health campaigner, which in the late 70s
Can
was
we see her
extremely
being in
popular.
Lidl? You know, can we see her shopping in Lidl
Probably.
in the day and age?
Absolutely.
She only died last year.
Oh, you're kidding?
Jimmy
So
Carter
maybe.
as well, just got to 100.
Yeah.
Wow.
Just voted
Happy
in,
birthday, President
Kamala.
Carter.
Yeah,
so-
lovely.
But guys, to round things off, before we have a little quiz, I want to know what your...
I'm a bit competitive, Ben.
But first, I want to know what you think of the potential first gentleman.
I think it's so exciting.
Yeah.
I think it's really, really interesting because, again, you can see like a sort of really fascinating dynamic coming out with Kamala
That's what I
and
think.
Doug, where he is the perfect first husband in a way because he is very happy for her to kind of take the spotlight, for her to be the kind of the one that is uber successful. He's successful in his own career, you know? He's sort of like, he's done all he wants to do, but he's so happy to just step back for a second and support her. Whilst seeming like he is in an absolute, completely equal partnership with her, you know?
And he sort of leaned into his role as second gentleman, which he is now, very well. He's, an energetic campaigner. He's a fierce defender of his wife. And he is also the first Jewish spouse of, he will be the first Jewish spouse of an American president.
Fabulous.
That is major.
There you go.
And he's took a very visible role in President Biden's administration in combating anti-Semitism. So he's already got his own causes and agendas that you can see sort of bubbling
really
away in the
helpful.
background.
Kind of gives him lots of scope to kind of become like a similar kind of camaraderie to see with the Obamas. Yeah.
And he's honoured to have his wife at the top of the ticker. He's been quoted as saying, and he can't take the title for the first gentleman because that would be Bill Clinton.
Really?
As obviously First Lady Hillary Clinton ran for president, and Bill Clinton could have been the first gentleman.
So if Kamala wins, then he gets to be the first.
Do you feel like perhaps because, Bill Clinton obviously being, former president, him being the first gentleman would have been a bit like a, not a letdown, but at least this way, Doug's really paving a new direction.
Yeah.
It might have felt a bit old and stale.
Yeah, I think so. It's all stuff you've seen before. I think in a time as well with such division between the genders, such polarization, and a lot of toxic masculinity kind of running around. It's really helpful to have a positive masculine role model.
It's interesting. Oh, sorry. It's interesting you say that because the way I've come across Doug is one of the first portrayals of him I saw was of Adam Sandler doing him on SNL. And I love Adam Sandler.
Andy Samberg.
Oh my God, Andy Samberg, not Adam. Adam Sandler would be very funny.
Yeah, that'd be a good one.
Andy Samberg, who is in Brooklyn Nine-Nine, and he's very well known. And it's interesting how, because I feel like with some of the comedic sketches, you kind of get a real impression of what the things are going to scrutinize or ridicule them for. And again, it always comes back to this kind of emasculating thing of having a powerful woman in a position. And I think,
I'm just interested into what his day-to-day role looks like because we see now, the first ladies take charge on the Christmas decorations and things like that, don't they? So I wonder if he's going to have a big Christmas spectacular lands of fuzz.
He has said he wants to decorate for Hanukkah, and Hanukkah does run in time with Christmas this year, so it's
that would
really
be
exciting.
Great to see. Now, that'd be great. Would that be White House Hanukkah? That'd be really
very
good.
exciting.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's very exciting, guys. But we shall see. We shall see what happens because Melania Trump could be doing the Christmas decorations.
Absolutely. Oh,
yet
it'll be
again,
her second
which
time
she
in.
did do a very good job of last time.
Yes,
I did like them. So, let's have a little quiz, guys.
Gosh, I
right,
don't know.
a first lady quiz. Right.
Look at him.
And the
Let's get
first
ready.
one,
Let's get
right, guys, I want you to guess which state has produced the most first ladies.
Ooh.
It's a big one.
I don't know why. Oh, a big one. It's
Yeah.
a big
Big
state.
state.
California.
No, Jess, that wouldn't be correct.
I'm just going off the biggest state I can think of right now. Is it Texas?
No, and I sort of
Georgia?
mean more metaphorically big. I think you guys are thinking in like square meters.
We're thinking of visual size.
Oh, New York.
You are right, Jess.
Yeah, because
There we go.
realistically,
That
New York
makes
is.
sense.
I mean, I know obviously, like New York, the state is quite big, but New York is very tiny.
Yeah.
Population.
From New York, we had a lot of historical first ladies. We had Rose Cleveland, Elizabeth Monroe, Priscilla Cooper, and more recently we've had Eleanor Roosevelt, Jacqueline Kennedy Onassis, Nancy Reagan,
There's a lot.
Good
and
old Jackie.
Jess,
Yeah.
your favourite, Barbara Bush. is a
Oh,
New
there you
York
go,
native.
Barbara Bush. That's why I knew.
Now, guys, a former first lady loved the colour pink so much that a specific shade was named in her honour. Who was she?
Oh my gosh.
Let's
That's
think
so iconic.
mid 20th century. What's the 1900s, 20th century? Think mid 20th century.
Let's fact check. Oh,
Think Cold War.
Cold War. Oh.
Is it Nancy Reagan?
No.
That's a good one though. I feel like is it?
Go on.
What's Nixon's wife's name? Oh my gosh.
Not Pat Nixon, no.
No.
You're testing our knowledge of presidents.
Yeah,
there,
you really
Ben.
are. Oh my gosh.
Um,
I'm drawing a blank.
do you want the answer,
Go
guys?
on.
Or give us an initials, actually. Yeah.
M.E.
M.E.
Eisenhower's wife.
Yeah, it was Mame
What was her name?
Mammy Eisenhower. She was a very popular first lady, and she cultivated the image of a perfect 1950s housewife.
Wow.
She was obsessed with the colour pink because she thought
for her.
it favoured her complexion. She
Interesting, yeah.
redecorated the White House in so much pink that the staff used to call it the Pink Palace, which is so funny.
That
That's
sounds
so
amazing.
good. She
And-
would do so well right now.
Yeah.
She would.
People
And,
would
love that.
and the shade
Pop it off on
became
TikTok.
known as First Lady Pink. So there's
Oh.
a shade of pink called First Lady
Oh,
Pink.
that's so lovely.
And yeah, and because it's just been Halloween, I'm going to get a bit spooky now.
Oh.
And a former First Lady, I'm going to give you a clue, she was a historical First Lady.
Okay.
She used to hold regular seances in the White House.
And you say like, are we talking like founding fathers historical?
Yeah, not far off. Her husband was a very famous president.
I'm going to say, was it John Adams' wife?
No, it wasn't Rosa.
that's a good one.
Even more famous than John Adams.
Oh gosh, you're really testing my knowledge of former presidents. They're like into like.
Lincoln's wife.
Yeah, you're correct. Rosa's winning in this. Are we
I'm
keeping score, by the way, guys?
away with this,
Look,
Jess. You gotta
guys.
catch me.
I was strong with the first one, and then
It was actually Mary Todd Lincoln. She was highly criticised for lavish spending during her time in the White House, but she did turn to spiritualism as a tool for processing grief. Her youngest son, William, died in February 1862,
no, he did,
and he was only 11. She was inconsolable and desperately looking for an outlet to sort of channel this. She was introduced to the Lawries, who were a well-known medium group in Georgetown. So Mrs. Lincoln used to find the comfort from their seances within that group, so much so that she started conducting her own in the Red Room of the White House.
Oh my gosh.
And there's evidence to suggest that she hosted as many as 8, and Abraham Lincoln, her husband, was in attendance.
Yeah, I
this
was
year.
thinking who would attend those, you know?
It was
How
probably
many
all
government
The top-
officials?
It was
Sure,
probably
yeah.
all women of like high society
Yeah.
and Washington.
They were
at the
big
time,
at the
weren't
time, seances. They were very large,
Yeah,
so.
they were.
they? Yeah. Right, we're coming to the end. You've got a few more.
Okay, I'll try my best.
Who,
Let's go.
Jess?
Lock
You
in,
should
Jess.
know.
Go on.
You should know this
I
one.
should know this one, okay.
Who is the only first lady to ever write a memoir from the dog's perspective?
Oh my gosh, it's Barbara Bush. Let's go.
It was Barbara Bush.
It's good old BB.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Millie's book, as dictated to Barbara Bush in 1990, was a children's book, and the proceeds went of the book sales went to a literacy non-profit organisation, and the book reached #1 on the New York Times bestseller list. and spent 23 weeks on Publishers Weekly hardcover bestseller list. And Millie was the Bush's English Springer Spaniel.
Oh, you've always got to have like some kind of like,
so
you know,
sweet.
domestics. It's a bit like, well, like Keir Starmer getting the cat in. It's kind of like,
Yeah.
You know,
Pets
you've
of
got to
the-
see them as a family.
yeah, you
Yeah.
do. You do.
Which former First Lady won an Emmy for her televised tour of the White House?
Ooh.
Was this Michelle Obama?
It wasn't it. We were going a little bit back.
A little bit further back.
Hillary Clinton?
No, but you're on the right. Like, it was a Democratic First Lady.
Was a Democratic First Lady.
It was before Hillary.
Okay. Jackie?
Yeah.
Yeah, let's go.
You really clawing some points back.
You are.
Kennedy did receive the special award for her hour-long tour of the White House, which originally aired on February the 14th, 1962
You know
on
what?
CBS.
I don't think of the Emmys as being that old.
I know. That's what I was thinking. I was
That's
like,
really thrown me.
I know.
How brilliant is that?
What was super impressive is that 1 out of every 3 Americans watched the broadcast, and the worldwide audience exceeded 100 million.
Oh my god.
So I think it was a very well-deserved Emmy. Right, last but not least, I think you're both on about 2 points each.
Yeah.
So this is going to be the decider.
Yeah.
Who was the first lady to ever wear trousers in public?
Oh gosh.
Jess did sort of mention her before.
Ooh.
Oh.
Have a roll back. Who did you talk about?
Why did I focus Jackie again? No.
No.
It was something that she would do though. Yeah.
It is. Can you give us an era, Ben?
Her husband was involved in the Watergate scandal.
Pat Nixon.
It was Pat Nixon. Jess, well done.
Good for Pat Nixon.
Pat Nixon wore trousers. It was the first lady
No
to ever wear
wonder.
trousers, and it was only in 1972.
Yeah, I was going to say that's quite,
Yeah.
that's quite
Yeah.
early.
And it was in a national magazine. Well, I thought that was quite late,
Yeah.
but
okay.
1972.
Women have been wearing trousers since like the 40s.
Yeah,
And
in all fairness.
she also held White House tours for the deaf and blind during her husband's presidency. So well done,
That's
Pat.
so lovely. Bring those
Well,
back.
guys, it was great. I think
It was
Jess
fantastic.
is the winner. It was a hard
Thank you,
start.
thank you.
But and you know what? I think, Rosie, your First Lady knowledge was overall a bit better. I think it was just a twist of fate, which has seen Jess as the winner.
What's my prize?
Your prize is a Barbara Bush outfit that we can buy and a wig with the pearls.
You know, it'd be
brilliant.
perfect for election night. Should we bring that out? At, like,
But I
2
don't
a.m.?
think they would be. I don't think you'd be able to get your hands on her exact pearls, and I can imagine they're worth a bit too much.
I've got pearl
too much
earrings.
money.
Is
there.
We don't
is
have that
good
in the
enough?
budget, I'm afraid, for 50
she's
days.
channeling Barbara
I've got
Bush.
channeling
today.
Barbara today.
And I think she probably did wear a lot of high necks as well. So, you know.
Well, you know, you never touch it, Ben.
Well, that's all from us for now, but it's not too long to wait, Caitlin.
You're not wrong, Ben. We hope to see you all very soon for our live stream on election night.
Yeah, and I absolutely cannot wait for that.
Me neither.
So from all of us here at 50 Days, I'm Ben Cook.
And I'm Caitlin Lang. Thank you and good night.